In 1952, on a cattle station outside Longreach in western Queensland, a 9-year-old girl named only in her grandmother's diary as Little June walked 4 miles through Spinifex country to fetch a draft horse that had broken through a fence line. She caught it with a halter she had braided herself from binder twine. She led it home bareback, crossing a dry creek where she stopped to read the sand for signs of water beneath the surface. She was not remarkable. Every child on that station could do the same, and most had done it younger. Today, according to Royal Life Saving Australia, roughly half of all Year 6 students in this country cannot swim 50 meters and tread water for 2 minutes. A generation that could shoe a pony before breakfast, raise children who cannot start a campfire without a tutorial on their phone. This is a list of 20 skills that were once basic knowledge for any Australian child growing up on a farm, a station, or in a bush town, not specialist skills. Skills that children under 12 learned by watching, by doing, and by being trusted with real responsibility in a landscape that did not forgive carelessness. Number 14 is a method of reading the weather from animal behavior that modern atmospheric research has only recently validated. Number 7 is a food preparation technique involving a native plant that Captain James Cook used to prevent scurvy in the 1770s, and that most modern Australians would walk past without recognizing. And number 2 is a survival skill so essential that every stockman's child in the Kimberley learned it before they could write their own name. The last generation to hold all 20 of these skills is now in their 80s. This is not a trivia list. This is a record of what it meant to grow up competent in a country that demanded it. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, subscribe now because we cover it every single week. Here are 20 forgotten survival skills every Australian kid learned before age 12. Number 20. Splitting firewood with a hand axe. The sound of a 3-pound axe head meeting iron bark at 6 in the morning was the alarm clock of the Australian bush. Every child on a farming property learned this first. Never swing above your shoulder. Always split on a chopping block, never on the ground. Aim for the grain lines and let the weight of the axe do the work. You started with a tomahawk and soft timber around age 6. By 10, you were splitting river red gum rounds for the kitchen stove. A family in the Riverina in the 1930s might burn through 2 tons of firewood between April and September. The children cut and stacked most of it. A trailer load of split red gum in rural New South Wales today sells for around $350. Your great-grandmother's 8-year-old did that job for nothing. Number 19. Reading a dry creek bed for water. In the Channel Country of Western Queensland and across the Barkly Tableland, knowing how to read a dry creek bed was not a curiosity. It was the difference between making it home and not. Children learned to look for green vegetation along the banks, especially river red gum and coolabah, because their roots only tap permanent moisture. They learned to dig in the outside bend of a dry creek where water collects deepest beneath the sand. Damp sand 2 feet down meant a soak was possible. Aboriginal Australians refined this knowledge over tens of thousands of years, and settler children absorbed versions of it from stockmen who had learned from First Nations people. That knowledge barely exists in suburban Australia now. Number 18. Catching, gutting, and cleaning a freshwater fish. A 10-year-old on a property along the Murrumbidgee could catch a yellow belly on a hand line, gut it on the bank with a pocket knife, and have it in a pan within 20 minutes. Cut from the vent to the jaw. Remove the guts without puncturing the gallbladder, or the flesh goes bitter. Scrape the scale's tail to head with the back of the blade. Murray cod, yellow belly, and Murray crayfish were protein staples for families along the inland rivers. In the 1950s, a Lachlan River family might eat riverfish 3 nights a week. It cost nothing. Today, a single fillet of Murray cod at a Sydney fish market sells for over $60 a kilogram. Number 17. Starting and managing a campfire safely. Every bush kid could build a fire by age 8. You started with a nest of dry, stringy bark and fine kindling no thicker than a pencil. You built a pyramid of sticks, leaving gaps for airflow. You lit the bark at the base and fed the fire upward. Never smother it. Never use green wood on a new fire. Never leave it unattended. Never build a fire under a tree with hanging bark in summer. In the eucalypt bush, a mismanaged fire could kill a family. The Country Fire Authority in Victoria has noted that practical knowledge of safe fire management among young Australians has declined significantly since the 1980s. Number 16. Milking a cow by hand. On dairy farms across Gippsland, the south coast of New South Wales, and the Atherton tablelands, children milked cows before school. You washed the udder with warm water. You sat on a three-legged stool with the bucket between your knees. You trapped the milk by closing thumb and forefinger at the top of the teat, then squeezed downward with each finger in sequence. Never pull. A good hand milker could fill a 4-gallon bucket in under 10 minutes. According to Dairy Australia, in 1960, there were over 60,000 dairy farms in this country. By 2023, fewer than 5,000 remained. Most Australian children today have never touched a cow. Number 15. Killing, plucking, and dressing a chook. This was not special on a farm. It was Tuesday. Every property kept laying hens, and when a bird stopped producing, it became dinner, a sharp pull to dislocate the neck, hanging the bird to bleed out, plucking immediately while still warm because the feathers release more easily, gutting with the liver, heart, and gizzard saved for gravy. The feet kept for stock. Nothing was wasted. 30 minutes from yard to kitchen. A free-range roasting chicken today costs $12 to $15. For decades, it cost a farm family nothing but the feed they grew themselves. Number 14. Reading weather from clouds and animal behavior. Long before the Bureau of Meteorology issued forecasts on a phone, every bush child could read the sky. Mares' tails meant wind within 24 hours. Thickening cloud layers meant rain within 36. When magpies sang late in the afternoon, fair weather was holding. When ants built their mounds higher than usual, heavy rain was coming. Researchers at the University of New England published findings in 2016 showing that traditional rural weather observation methods correlated significantly with actual atmospheric patterns. Nobody wrote this down because everyone already knew it. Most Australian children today cannot name a single cloud type. Number 13. Identifying and avoiding venomous snakes. Australia is home to 21 of the 25 most venomous snake species on Earth. Every bush child learned to identify the eastern brown, the tiger snake, the red-bellied black, and the taipan by sight. Never step over a log without looking first. Never put your hand into a hollow. If you see one, stand still and let it pass. In the Mallee and the western districts of Victoria, brown snakes were a daily presence from October to March. A generation of children who grew up alongside the most venomous land snakes on the planet knew exactly what to do. Their grandchildren would not recognize a brown snake from a garden hose. Here's where it gets interesting. The first 13 skills on this list kept children safe in everyday station life. The next 7 are the ones that separated a child who could survive a real crisis from one who could not. These are the skills that vanished fastest, because they were the hardest to teach without real country to teach them in. Number 12. Navigating by the Southern Cross at night. Every bush child learned to find south before they learned long division. Find the 4 stars of the cross. Draw an imaginary line from the top through acrux at the bottom and extend it 4.5 times its length. Find the 2 pointer stars, Alpha and Beta Centauri. Draw a line between them and extend a perpendicular from the midpoint until it meets the first line. That intersection marks the south celestial pole. Drop it to the horizon. That is due south. The Indigenous Knowledge Institute at the University of Melbourne has documented that Aboriginal Australians used the Southern Cross for navigation for tens of thousands of years. Settler children learned simplified versions from stockmen. Today, most Australian children cannot find the Southern Cross even on a clear night. Number 11. Setting a rabbit trap. Rabbits arrived in Australia in 1859 when Thomas Austin released 24 wild rabbits near Geelong in Victoria. Within decades, they were ecological catastrophe and free meat simultaneously. Every farm child learned to set a steel-jawed trap along a rabbit run, disguised with loose soil, just inside a burrow entrance. Never handle the trap with bare hands or the scent warns them off. Check at dawn. During the Depression, a family in the southwest slopes of New South Wales might trap 30 a week. That was the difference between hunger and a full table. The skill effectively vanished after the introduction of myxomatosis in 1950. Number 10. Skinning and preparing a rabbit for the pot. Children learned to make a single cut around each hind leg below the knee joint, then peel the skin downward in one piece like pulling off a glove. The skin was pegged on a wire frame and dried for sale. Rabbit skins fetched a few pence each in the 1930s, but for a family of 6 in Depression-era Queensland, those pence fed children. The carcass was gutted, the kidneys and liver kept, and the body jointed for stewing. A rabbit stew with root vegetables could feed a family for 2 days. The last generation of Australian children who learned this as a matter of course are now in their late 70s. Here is a detail that rarely makes it into the conversation about this era. These were not wealthy families teaching novelties. The Federation drought from 1895 to 1903 killed half the sheep in Australia. The Depression pushed rural families to starvation. These skills were the architecture of survival. Children carried their share. Number 9. Mending a barbed wire fence. Fencing was constant, unglamorous, and essential. Every child on a grazing property learned to splice barbed wire using fencing pliers and tie wire. You twisted the broken ends in a figure 8, wrapped tight, and tested with your boot. A sloppy splice meant stock through the fence by morning. Children as young as 10 rode fence lines after storms. A professional fencing contractor today charges between $8 and $12 per meter. A child with pliers and wire kept it standing for free. Number 8. Handling and riding a horse. Across the Kimberley, the Gulf Country, and the Darling Downs, children rode horses before bicycles. Approach from the left shoulder. Check the girth before mounting. Never wrap the reins around your hand. Never approach from behind without speaking first. By 10, most station children could saddle, ride, and unsaddle a working horse without help. The Australian Stockman's Hall of Fame in Longreach has documented the rapid decline of equestrian skills among rural children since the 1990s, as motorbikes and helicopters replaced horses in mustering. Number 7. Identifying and preparing warrigal greens safely. Warrigal greens, also known as native spinach, grow wild across coastal and subcoastal Australia. Captain Cook's crew collected them in the 1770s to prevent scurvy, recognizing their high vitamin C content. Aboriginal Australians had eaten them for thousands of years before that. But warrigal greens contain oxalic acid, which in large quantities can harm the kidneys. Every bush child who foraged them knew the rule: never eat them raw. Always blanch in boiling water for 1 to 2 minutes, drain, and discard the water. That step removes most of the oxalic acid. Modern food science confirms this completely. The chemistry was right, the grandmothers were right. We just forgot to ask them before they were gone. Number 6. Making damper in a camp oven. Damper is the oldest bread tradition in non-Indigenous Australian cooking. Every station child learned the method. Mix flour, water, and a pinch of salt. Shape into a round. Place in a greased camp oven on a bed of coals with more coals on the lid. 45 minutes later, bread. Never open the lid in the first 30 minutes or the damper will not rise. A good damper had a golden crust and a soft, dense crumb. Eaten hot with butter and golden syrup, it was the finest thing in the bush. Artisan sourdough sells for $9 a loaf in the city today. Your great-grandmother made it from 3 ingredients and a fire. Number 5. Tying essential working knots. Every station child could tie at least half a dozen knots by age 10. The bowline, the clove hitch, the timber hitch, the truckie's knot, and the reef knot were standard. The bowline was most important. It creates a fixed loop that will not slip under load and can always be untied. You used it to tether horses, secure loads, rig a shelter, and in emergencies, to lower a person from a height. If you cannot tie it in the dark with cold hands, you do not know it well enough. Number 4. Preserving fruit in Fowler's Vacola jars. Joseph Fowler emigrated from England to Melbourne in 1912, and by 1915 had developed the Fowler's Vacola home bottling system. It became a fixture of Australian kitchens through the Depression and the war. Children helped at every stage, washing and sterilizing the jars, peeling and slicing the fruit, packing tightly with sugar syrup at the correct ratio, placing the rubber seal and metal lid and clipping them in place, lowering the jars into the sterilizer and bringing the temperature to 92 degrees for 1 full hour. Never rush the temperature, never skip the seal check. A properly bottled jar would last 12 months in a cool, dark pantry. The company still operates more than 110 years later, but the generation who used the system weekly has almost entirely passed. Number 3. Bush first aid for snakebite. Every bush child learned what to do. Before the formal pressure immobilization technique was developed by Struan Sutherland in the 1970s, families taught practical rules. Keep the person still. Do not wash the bite. Do not cut it. Immobilize the limb with a straight stick and strips torn from a shirt. Wrap firmly, but not so tight you cut off circulation. Keep them calm and get help. The University of Melbourne's Australian Venom Research Unit has confirmed that pressure immobilization remains the recommended first aid for all Australian venomous snake bites. A generation of bush children knew instinctively what modern medicine took decades to formalize. Number 2. Swimming in open water with confidence. This defined an Australian childhood. Not swimming in a heated pool with lane ropes, swimming in a river, a dam, the ocean, water that was cold, murky, with currents. Every rural child could swim before starting school. They learned in farm dams, in the Murray, the Murrumbidgee, the Lachlan. They learned to read a current, float on their back when tired, and never swim alone. Royal Life Saving Australia reported in 2025 that half of Year 6 students cannot meet the basic swimming benchmark. 31% of schools offer no swim program at all. A country surrounded by water is raising children who cannot save themselves in it. And number 1, the instinct of self-reliance itself. This is not a single skill. It is the foundation beneath all the others. A child who grew up on a station in the Riverina in the 1940s did not wait to be told. They saw what needed doing, and they did it. They read the landscape the way a modern child reads a screen. They were trusted with knives, with fire, with animals, and with solitude. Not because their parents were careless, but because competence was the gift their parents gave them. Fewer than 45% of Australian children play outdoors most days. They average over 20 hours per week on screens. They are supervised, scheduled, and protected from every risk, except the greatest risk of all. Never learning what they are capable of. Pick one, just one. Take your children or grandchildren outside this weekend and teach them to start a fire safely, or tie a bowline, or identify the Southern Cross on a clear night. Walk along a creek and show them where to look for water. These skills do not require a property or a station. They require a willingness to pass on what matters before it disappears completely. What was the one skill your grandparents taught you as a child that you realize now almost nobody else knows? Was it something from this list or something we missed? Tell us in the comments. Every story down there is a piece of the record, and every piece matters. The men and women who built this country with their hands carried knowledge that no library captured and no university taught. That knowledge is thinner now than it has ever been, but it is not gone. Not yet. Your grandparents knew. Now you know too.